Hey, welcome to the Drone On podcast. I'm your host, Will Gilliland, and today is May 9th. And I recorded this episode actually at the beginning of April 2nd. And the following day, April 3rd, I ended up having to go to the doctor and get some medication for upper respiratory infection. And so when I was editing this video, you can kind of see that, or I could kind of feel that, like just kind of the way I looked and was talking throughout this episode. So I apologize for that, but I didn't want to have to reschedule. I really wanted to get this recording done with Gagan because I'm really excited to learn about some of the stuff that his company Solar Survey AI is doing. Not only are they operating here in the U.S., but throughout the world. They're in multiple different countries, and I was really excited to hear about some of the stuff that they're doing. So hope I can share that with you through this podcast, and hope you find something really interesting about that and about their company, Solar Survey AI. And appreciate you tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for future episodes. I just recorded with Nick at Quantum Systems, and so that one will be in the works here soon. So like I said, appreciate you tuning in, and here's Gagan. Thanks. And so, Gagan, I was going to ask you a little bit about your background and how you kind of got started in the drone industry.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, my name is Gagan Nanua. I'm 18 years old, and I'm currently living in Naperville, Illinois. I've been working for Solar Survey AI for about coming up on a year now. We're based out of Chicago, but we have residential technicians in 29 states, and we're becoming to enter Nigeria and Australia as well.
Wow.
Like you mentioned, Solar Survey AI, we rebranded from our old company name, which was Sealy, which we specialized in residential and commercial solar site assessments. Um, just recently, I want to say about a year ago, we're still doing that, but we've kind of shifted on to coming up with our autonomous drone solution that mainly focuses on utility solar farms.
Excellent, excellent. And how did you kind of get started into the drone industry? Like, when you left high school, did you go for school for this, or did you start working with another company, or how'd you kind of get involved with drones?
Yeah, for sure. So, I've since a very young age, probably 9 or 10, I've always had this dream of being a pilot. Really, that's kind of my main passion. Aviation is still my passion, but becoming a pilot was honestly my main goal. So, when I was about 16 years old, I decided to pursue a private pilot's license, and that was my fixed wing certificate, which I've just earned. Actually, this month I just earned it. But
Congrats.
when I was in my junior year of high school, I kind of realized that. Funny story, actually, I was watching TikTok like a bunch of young people do. Um, Becoming a drone pilot was actually on like a top 10 like growing industry, and I was like, I mean, I'm already getting a fixed wing certificate. I already have like the FAA knowledge. Why don't I just go do this? So
Mhm.
I ordered a drone Black Friday, actually, DJI Mini 2 series. I was kind of experimenting with it, thought maybe I should go shoot some like real estate photos. I got a couple of those. And I was just browsing Google one day and I saw a job posting for a drone pilot in Chicago for Sealy. I was like, you know what, let
Mhm.
me, I might not have the most experience, but it doesn't hurt to apply. So I ended up applying. I actually had also earned my Part 107 the month before I applied, so I kind of got an interview within a month, which is kind of unheard of. But
Wow.
yeah. So I applied for this, and my boss right now, who's Donnie, he had texted me, "Oh, let's set up an interview and everything like that." So once he set up the interview, that kind of broke me into the industry because I think I'm really a firm believer of, you know, convincing someone to take a chance on you because it's like everyone says, it's always that one chance that gets your foot in the door. So I had a really good interview and I ended up getting an offer actually the same day. So fast forward to now, I've still been with them and continue conducting site assessments.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Solar Survey AI. What kind of is your company focused on? Obviously, solar and AI, but give us a little bit of background on that company.
Yeah, so our company was founded in 2019 by our CEO. His name's Carson Cloud. He started the company basically just conducting manual surveys on the south side of Chicago. And I would about to say into a year, we've actually experienced like over 1,200% growth because from when he started this company, it was just him. And now I want to say we have about 50 to 60 pilots worldwide right now. So we've grown quite
Wow.
a bit. We've always been focused on the solar site assessment because, especially nowadays, AI has become such a needed thing. Especially there's like medicine, aviation, engineering. AI is always going to be there. So an AI solution, especially some like solar site surveys where your measurements have to be on spot, all the shading and the UV exposure has to be accurate. Because if that's not accurate, then you're not going to have an accurate install of the solar panels, and that's just going to become a bigger headache, right? So we've always been focused on that. It's not till about a year ago where we kind of shifted our focus into more of an autonomous solution because that's for a lot of companies. If you look at Skydio, Flock Safety, all these companies that are coming up with autonomous solutions for different industries. We're just trying to break into that ourselves so we can create an autonomous solution that will benefit everyone worldwide.
Gotcha. Yeah, interesting. Now, the solar, are you mostly focused on like solar farms, or are you kind of like doing residential or both, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, so our autonomous solution is going to be mainly for utility solar farms. What us manual techs do, we do on residential and commercial sites. Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And how big are some of these sites? I'm imagine they get pretty big.
Oh yeah, they can get pretty big. I mean, me personally, I've only done a couple of commercial sites. I probably say my biggest one was like a huge private school. It was about 3 stories tall. Um, but most of the time, yeah, we're doing residential houses like your average, 3,500, 4,000 for square feet house.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And now, are you mostly using like photogrammetry or lidar or any sort of sensors? Is it mostly camera?
For residential commercial, it's mostly camera because, like I said before, we take those photos and we take about 80 to 100 photos when we plug into our software. That's able to
Wow.
generate a 3D model that's accurate down to 2 inches. But for our utility solar
Wow.
farms, we're going to be using RGB, LiDAR, and thermal as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, that's something that air velocity, we have a lot of experience in, especially LiDAR.
Hmm.
But we also use multispectral and a couple other different sensors.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
know you had mentioned, when we were talking before the podcast that, one of the things you guys are really interested in are, designing your own, proprietary fixed wing
Hmm.
system. And I think that's something that's really interesting, really fantastic. Having worked for a drone manufacturer, I have some knowledge on kind of what goes into building them,
Hmm.
and but recently, Air Velocity has purchased a EV toll fixed wing from Quantum Systems, the Trinity Pro, so it's able to carry multiple different payloads.
Oh
But
yeah, for
what
sure.
we but like 90-minute flight time. So that's a lot of area
Hmm.
that a drone can cover. And I'm assuming if you guys are going to be working with some of these huge solar farms, that fixed wing really makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was going to ask you a little bit about what you can talk about with your ideas on the fixed wing that you guys are kind of looking to develop.
Yeah, for sure. So the fixed wing system is going to kind of be similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with Zipline, they're out of Texas. They usually
Mhm.
they have autonomous fixed wing solution as well. So ours is going to be kind of similar in the way that it sits on the farm. It's in an actual docking station, and the owner of the farm is able to control what time it wants to go out, what it wants it to survey, and once that data is inputted, the drone will automatically take off and fly those routes and then automatically log them, and you'll get data based on one of the big problems in utility solar farms is soiling, right? Because if you have a bunch of dirt, your overall UV exposure percentage goes down. So it's going to give you things like that. If there's any kind of damage on your panels, what needs to be cleaned, when needs to be cleaned, how often, just things that of that nature.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. The autonomous is really fascinating to me, and just like you know, with regulation and beyond visual line of sight and that type of thing, would there be a technician or a pilot, or will these be beyond visual line of sight certified.
So yeah, so regarding that, I wouldn't have too much information on it because, like I said, I'm not really leading this project, but I will say
Gotcha.
my own experience when the FAA does come out with Part 108, beyond visual light sounds and rules. Obviously, we're gonna have to adhere to that. But my
Hmm.
guess is that, like Skydio does, they usually send out a technician to the actual operator so they can run system tests and all of that things of nature for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, well, I'm really excited to hear about that. That type of mindset and with drones. I think there's a lot of companies that are interested in being able to have a push button drone follows a pre-designed mission and it comes back and then
Hmm.
keeps the you know pilot and all that type of stuff out of it. And, if there's a way to just push a button, have a drone take off and do its mission and come back, I think there's a big demand, especially in solar and in, like energy section. So
Hmm.
I'm really really excited to hear more about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so what are some of the challenges and maybe some of the unique experiences for the drone operations that you guys have going on at Solar Survey AI?
So I'd probably say one of the most unique experiences, or I guess challenges, is like I said before, we're in 29 states, so a lot of the times, especially in the Midwest here in Illinois, our weather's not that good all year round. So,
Hmm.
we're scheduling those surveys, and sometimes, oh, bam, it'll be sunny, and then big thunderstorm rolls and survey canceled, right? Because we can't fly drones in 50-mile-an-hour winds. So obviously,
Yep.
that's one of the more bigger challenges, especially because if you're not living in like Florida or California where it's not sunny all year long, not only does it make it tough on the drone, I mean, it also makes it tough on the technician as well. Like, I don't know if anyone would really want to go out in like -5 degrees and do surveys with a drone standing outside. Not many people are interested in
Hmm.
that. So I probably say it's one of our most bigger challenges for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That weather plays a big part in our operations as well. Um, you know, a lot of our work's been down in Mississippi recently. A lot of our work has been, and the weather down there is usually not too bad in the winter.
Hmm.
But this year we did get a snowstorm through there, which is usually not oftenly heard of. But during the summer, it gets so hot, and one of our pilots was telling me that he's like, I drank like a case of water a day just being out in the
Yeah.
field. It's so hot and humid, and so yeah, weather plays a big deal. Wind, we have issues. Um, Sometimes airspace issues, especially with like if we're working in fields with crop dusters,
Hmm.
we have to
Yep.
be
Yep.
very careful and let them know when we're going to be in the areas. And so with the with some of the solar, especially on like the solar farms, do you ever have issues with maybe like I don't know access restriction, or do you usually have like a technician from the solar company or the owner of that solar farm when
Um,
you access that property?
yeah, yeah. Me personally, I never actually surveyed a solar farm before, but from what I've heard, I don't think we've usually had any access issues or anything like that. Usually, when we get these jobs that they come in, we're usually like scheduling and working out logistics at least a week in advance, just so we don't have any
Gotcha,
problems when we go out there.
gotcha, awesome. Yeah. So what are some of the the interesting field experiences that you or your company has had doing some of this type of survey work?
Yeah, for sure. So we had a technician out of New Jersey. Um, he does solar surveys out there, but we actually had a farm that had to be surveyed up in I don't know if you're familiar, it's called Sault Ste. Marie. It's a little island in northern Michigan, just off of the border of Canada and the United States. Um, so he was actually one of our more experienced pilots. He has experience with RGB thermal. He's been doing pipeline and utility inspections for years and years now. So he was one of our trusted people to go out there. So we actually had him made a 3,300 mile round trip driving from New Jersey to Michigan. And when he had got out there, uh, no one told him he had to take a ferry all the way out to the island. So he actually ended up putting his car on a ferry with the drone, and he took a
Wow.
ferry all the way out to the island, surveyed it in about an hour and a half, and then he went back home. That's one of the more, I've actually never even heard of that before myself. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he was pretty
Yeah.
surprised when he got there.
Talk about your daily commute. That's an interesting one.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that drone pilots, we always have to be prepared for the unexpected.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys get it all the time. We find it. Stuff happens that is out of your prediction. We have to be quick on our feet. We don't have a repair station out in the field, so we have to
Oh
be able
yeah,
to
yeah.
fix stuff, and
Hmm.
we can't wait on something to come in. If we break something and order something, we have to be able to fix it on our
Yeah.
own. So drone pilots are really ingenuitive and are able to be quick on their feet. So I always
Hmm.
find that interesting. Um, so some of the work you guys are doing, I mean, obviously solar is, a very interesting type of, conservation tool. It's helping reduce waste and carbon buildup and that type of stuff. So I'm assuming a lot of the work you guys are doing, is helping these solar companies. I was going to see
Hmm.
if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, going back to the residential and commercial site, when we're going out to these sites, we're kind of conducting I guess, a pre-installation assessment. That's what we call it. So we're taking, not only are we taking our drone photos, we're taking pictures of things like the utility box. We're measuring out, you know, things in the attic just to see what the measurement is for the panel or where it's going to be located. That's just one of the few things that we include in those surveys. And one thing that we've gotten feedback on, especially with the drones, is that it's really a time saver because, especially back in the olden days, we'll think like 5, 10 years back. Before, you would have to have a technician that physically goes on the roof and they're drawing out your entire home layout, including the roof. And most of the times with human error, those measurements are going to be about 3, 4 inches off. So when they go to the actual blueprint, then, oh, they're going to realize, oh, these measurements are wrong. We got to go back out there and remeasure this. So one thing we've realized is that when we've done these surveys and then we've done the drone combined with the drone photography that converts it to a 3D model, we're able to have better feedback because they can physically zoom in on the model and see the accurate dimensions down to 2 inches. So it's more of a kind of a not only a logistics problem solver, but also a time saver as well, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. And I'm sure, especially with like, you had mentioned that one was 3 stories up. I'm sure there's a human safety factor, um, that keeping technicians all having to go up on the roof for measurements and that type of
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Yeah. A story, I probably shared this before on the podcast, but some of the work we've done in the past with the United States Department of Agriculture. They have a branch called the NRCS, National Natural Resources Conservation Service, and some of the work that we've done with them has been scanning dams and levees.
Hmm.
Kind of water retention. You imagine a really big pond or lake, and they built these earthen dams to hold water. It kind of prevents sedimentation downfield, and
Hmm.
they use it for agriculture. Well, anyways, just like anything, these dams need maintenance. They need assessed, and it prevents erosion, or they look for erosion and where to fix these dams. And so, we've been using lidar and multispectral to scan a lot of these dams and provide that information to the NRCS. And
Hmm.
one of the NRCS engineers was telling a story about how they used to do it before using us and using drones. They would go out in a boat. One technician would be in a boat, and another one would be on the bank, and they would do, elevation measurements, throughout. And he said that, this is down in the South. So there's alligators, there's water moccasins,
Oh
there's,
yeah.
all these stuff. And then not only, you're working around a dam, a lot of these dams have these inlet pipes, and those are just inherently dangerous, and so kind of what I was trying to get to is drones have the ability to keep people out of harm's way. You can't
Hmm.
put a price on a human life, but you can always replace a drone, and so there's a lot of good things. Drones are tools, and they can help keep people out of harm's way. And so
Yeah, for
I always
sure,
find
for
that really
sure.
interesting.
Yeah, especially in this industry, there's so many injuries and deaths from just falling off of roofs in general. So this just really kind of mitigates that risk overall.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mentioned us working with the NRCS. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the companies that maybe you guys have partnerships with, or future goals to grow? What kind of collaborations does Solar Survey AI have?
Yeah, for sure. So one of our bigger ones is Good Power. They're based out of Denver, Colorado. They usually have, not only are they in Illinois, they're kind of in Florida and some other states that we have that they usually just subcontract salesmen out to do assessments and get people to get involved in solar. That's one of our bigger clients that I personally work with as well, especially being Illinois. Most, I would probably say about, I don't know, 85% of the site assessments I do are from Good Power. But we do have some other ones like SunNova, Exo Energy, Power Up Solutions, and also the NSIS as well.
Gotcha, gotcha. And are they the companies that are actually installing the solar panels?
Yes, these are the installation companies. Yes.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I find that really interesting. Uh, and for somebody that's wanting to start out, kind of like yourself, starting out in the drone industry, what are some of maybe some advice you could give getting hired on at a company like Solar Survey AI or Air Velocity?
Hmm.
What are some things that you can recommend for somebody that's trying to get their foot in the door?
Yeah, for sure. So I think just like anything, you really have to have a passion for. I think a lot of people have this attitude, especially with Part 107, that oh, I'm just gonna go out and get this plastic card because it's just a 1 hour test, right? Especially in this industry, that's not gonna work because especially when we look at other companies, like us, there's a company in Romeoville that does power washing drones. It's a $60,000 drone. I don't think if I was in an interview and I look at someone's resume and I see, oh, you got this license a month ago, I don't think I would really have, the trust in you to operate that, especially because it's such an expensive asset, right? So I think that if
Hmm.
you want to break into this industry, get the license, but I think first of all, you should get a drone and really experiment with, what you want to do. There's so much industry out there. There's videography, photography, real estate. There's so many things you can do with the Part 107 just on your own. I think starting your own business or your own, I guess, personal side hustle, getting a little bit of experience, getting some hours in your drone, that's really going to put your foot in the door. And that combined with, especially networking. I mean, I always tell people network, 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 because you never know down the road, oh, this guy knows another guy who owns a drone company. Maybe you want to get into that. So I
Hmm.
think that's one of the more bigger things, is just really finding your own path and getting some experience before you actually apply for a job, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that's big for Air Velocity. Our internship program definitely helps with that. But we hire a lot of military vets.
Hmm.
A lot of people that have been in the military, just because that hands-on experience that they get is very hard to compete with in the commercial world. And so like you had mentioned, I think one of our aircraft with the lidar is pushing 300,000. And like you said, you don't want to just put that in somebody's hands that doesn't have any training, or
Yeah.
doesn't have the experience.
Hmm.
Obviously, we put our pilots through a training program and get them up to speed before they ever have the controller in their hand.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, sometimes that getting that experience, going from DJI, personal drones to get into commercial drones, that sometimes bridging that gap is a little difficult.
Hmm.
And kind of like you said, knowing people, having those connections is really crucial. Um, you know, we hire not just because you have a Part 107, but because you're able to work well with the group,
Hmm.
because you're able to think on your feet, because you have knowledge of what to do when stuff goes wrong. That's the big thing. Most of the time everything's working fine, but it's when the stuff goes wrong. It's how do you perform under those pressures. And so that's one of the things that we kind of look for in candidates when we hire drone pilots. But like you had mentioned, that's something that Solar Survey AI is also you know interested in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
and I just want to comment also. I think not only in the drone industry, but in aviation as a whole, right? I'll give you an example. When I got my private pilot's license, I was told it was going to take me 40 hours. It ended up taking me around, I want to say 83. But not only is that, it's like when you go to an airline interview, yes, you have a private license, yes, you have an instrument rating, all these licenses, but just because you have those licenses doesn't necessarily mean they're going to trust you with, a $50 million 737, right? You got to have experience just like anything. You have to have a high level of safety, especially that's another big thing in the drone industry. I think a lot of people disregard safety. There's been a lot of incidents. Think of like the one in LaGuardia where sorry, not LaGuardia, in DC where the helicopter and American Airlines, they crashed, right? A lot
yeah,
of people don't realize that there is every day, there's probably about, I want to say 50 to 100 airspace incursions with drones just because people aren't even vigilant. And that's going to hold, in the end of the day, that's going to hold you liable if something actually happens. So I think that being big on safety, you know, being big on, an I'm safe checklist, making sure you yourself as the PIC is safe, and also just being generally aware of your airspace awareness and everything. I think that's really going to set you up for success for sure.
yeah, absolutely. I just saw a video the other day of I think it was a Mavic, DJI Mavic, um, landing in a Major League Baseball game. I guess it had flown in, and then maybe the battery got low, or something happened, and it started descending. And one of the team managers went out and just kind of grabbed it. And but we all know you can't fly a drone over a stadium, but yet it
Yep.
still happens
It still
all the
happens. Yep.
time. The Cincinnati, we have the Bengals. I think it was the Bengals in Baltimore during one of the late season games last season, and the same thing happened. They had to pause the game for a while because there was a drone flying over, and that falls back on the pilots. That falls back on the education. Anybody can go into Best Buy, buy a drone off the shelf, and start flying it, but not having that education, uh, you know, it gets us. It makes companies like us look bad that
Hmm.
people are doing bad things with drones, even though we follow a regiment of all these safety protocols, checklists, airspace, and all the pre-planning and flight planning and stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, it's I guess it's important for companies like Air Velocity and Solar Survey AI, just to kind of set those ground rules and show that, hey, companies are following the rules. Hey, we're doing the right thing, and give drones kind of a better reputation. Um,
Yeah, yeah, especially a lot of times, especially in Illinois, we have a lot of Class Bravo and Class Delta airspaces around here. So a lot of times you're having to get a LANC authorization. Just me personally, I use autopilot. I just click on my mission, it's doing automatically. A lot of the airports actually don't have the technology to support the automatic authorization, so you usually have to get a waiver from the FAA. But what I've actually noticed is a lot of people, they'll just, they'll go on the DJI app, they'll just be like, oh, I'm going to ignore this, whatever. That's a lot of times that the air traffic control catches you, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. I mean, especially for me, I've gone a couple of those where I can't get the authorization, so it doesn't really hurt. I just go on my app, I get the phone number for the air traffic control tower, I just call them up, I'm like, hey, I'm flying this mission, just seeing it for about 30 minutes. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have a problem with it. Just about really taking accountability and just making sure you're safe so everyone around you is also safe as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the air traffic controllers, at least in my experience, have always been very nice, very understanding. I did a mission a couple years back. They were building a restaurant right near the southern approach into CVG, Cincinnati's airport.
Hmm.
And CVG's got three different runways, north-south runways, and then so it was at the far east south end of this runway. And I mean, airplanes are coming in at like maybe 300 feet above me, and it was a little bit scary as a young drone pilot.
Hmm.
And but I had got the authorization. It was hard to kind of navigate that for the first time and figure out, okay, I need to send this in, I need to submit this, and then the CVG's tower had sent me a letter back when everything got approved, and say, hey, on the actual day, at that actual time, we want you to give us a call. And I remember there was an issue with getting the unlock for the DJI code. Back then, I
Hmm.
was using like a Phantom 4, I think, and I have my computer. I'm in my car trying to get all this done, and I had to call the tower. It was a really stressful
Hmm.
situation, but when I called the tower and I said, hey, I'm going to go over my time limit, they were very, very nice and said, okay, just give us a call as soon as you're ready to take off, and then give us a call as soon as you land. We're going to still have airplanes coming in on this runway, but we're able to kind of move things around, and we're going to alert them that you're flying, when they call in and when we give them the clearance. So that was an interesting situation, but I was still able to do it and do it the correct way, and that's the big problem for me is these people, go buy a drone and they just ignore all that. They just don't follow the rules, and then it makes it hard for companies that are following the rules, because there's a bad reputation, or somebody had done something wrong.
Hmm.
If we all follow the rules, then it works out for everybody.
Yep, for sure, for sure.
You know. So, Solar Survey AI. How do people? What's the best way for people to connect with you, with your company?
Yeah, so we're pretty big on LinkedIn. We're always posting our work and everything like that. But I always tell people if you really have any other questions, you can go to our website, which is the www.solarsurvey.ai. And we actually have a little bit of an AI chatbot that can assist you with everything you need. I'll give you your contact info and get you in touch with us within about 1 to 3 business days.
Excellent, excellent. And then, for pilots that may be interested, or do you guys post your job listings on LinkedIn, or is there like a career page on the website, or what's the best way? What's the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
way to
So
go about that?
for employment purposes, you can use the website, but we usually post on LinkedIn. Like we had a couple jobs posted for software engineer, GIS engineer. Those were in remote jobs in Lagos, Nigeria. And then we also had we just filled our drone pilot position in Australia for testing for our software. So those positions have been filled for sure. But if we do come up with them, they're usually on LinkedIn.
Excellent, excellent. Um, that brought me back to a question I wanted to ask you earlier about some of the work you're doing in some of these other countries. It sounds really fascinating. Are these other countries like very solar dependent? Do they use solar a lot? Is that why? What brought Solar Survey to these other countries?
Yeah, so I think being solar dependent, I think Nigeria would be more of kind of in that industry because Australia is pretty developed in a kind of way where they're just kind of like the United States, they're just adding solar to be more green. But yeah, Nigeria is most of the African countries are really shooting towards solar energy, especially because of all these cities and villages that are remote areas. There's not really an efficient way to get electricity. So I think Nigeria is mainly towards the solar sector and kind of revamping their industry for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's interesting how that's kind of developed
Yeah, yep,
or
for sure.
developing. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on the Drone On podcast, and it was really exciting, very insightful. Definitely something that's interesting to see how solar survey AI and how drones are kind of changing the way we go about things. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
want to thank
Appreciate you
you
having
again
me.
for being on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. Yeah, no problem. And for any guests that are listening that might be interested, I'm doing a webinar with Yellow Scan. They're one of the largest LiDAR manufacturers for drone-based LiDARs. And so we're going to be recording a webinar on the 8th, April 8th. And so feel free to tune into that. Links are on our LinkedIn, and you can follow along for that. Got a couple of interesting podcast guests in the works right now. I've got a few that I'm about to post. So stay tuned, follow along, and thank you for joining in. Um, that's all I got. Everybody
All
take
right.
care.
Thank you.